Welcome to Karma Chronicles. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin. I was sitting in a conference room, the hum of a dozen voices around me, my palms sweating as the lead partner outlined what felt like the millionth strategy session for our firm's biggest client. My mind was somewhere else, somewhere miles away, in my apartment, which, thanks to a never-ending renovation, wasn't even close to feeling like home anymore. That's when it happened. My phone buzzed, the screen lighting up with a push notification from my security system. I froze. The words "motion detected in your apartment" flashed in bold letters, followed by a grainy image from my front door camera. Someone was inside. I pulled up the live feed without thinking, holding my breath as the screen loaded. There she was, Claire, my sister, the one who'd always been the family's golden child, the one who never had to fight for attention, the one everyone adored. There she was, right inside my place, digging through my stuff like it was a yard sale. She looked like she belonged there, effortlessly. In fact, I hadn't seen her this calm since forever. She'd always been the calm, collected one. But that moment, that was different. She wasn't just wandering around either. No, she was heading straight for my office, the one place that was mine and mine alone. The one place I kept everything tight, everything locked up. The one place I knew if anything was stolen, it'd hurt. Deeply. I fought the urge to stand up, to scream at her through the screen, but I couldn't. Not here, not now. I was in the middle of a meeting that could make or break the firm. But this was family. This was betrayal. I glanced over at my boss, nodding along with what he was saying, my mind racing 100 miles a minute. My fingers trembled as I pulled up my colleague's contact info. I couldn't let Claire know I was onto her. Not yet. I texted him quickly, asking for a full investigation into the breach, making sure to keep it under wraps. As Claire moved closer to my safe, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. What was she doing? What was she after? I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just a sibling squabble. This was a problem. A big one. I watched Claire's fingers move over the safe's lock like she'd done it 1,000 times before. The small metal tool she was using slipped into the mechanism with a practiced ease I couldn't quite believe. This was my sister, always the pretty one, the charming one, the one who never had to work hard for anything. And now she was breaking into my office like it was no big deal, no second thought. She didn't even hesitate when she found the right spot, twisting the lockpick with slow precision. I leaned forward, my heart thumping in my chest, praying I wasn't imagining the whole thing. But no. There she was, methodical, focused, breaking into my private space. I knew I needed to call someone, but the words stuck in my throat. I had to report this, before it was too late, before she took something I couldn't get back. But I had to be careful. I couldn't let Claire know I was onto her. Not yet. I quickly sent another text to my colleague, asking him to alert the firm's legal department about a potential breach. The thought of involving them made my skin crawl, but I had no choice. Claire was already in the safe, and whatever she pulled out of there had the potential to bring everything crashing down. I turned my attention back to the feed. She was so calm, like this was just a regular day, casually unlocking my safe with no more thought than if she were picking out a new dress. It made my stomach churn. How could she? How could she, of all people, do something like this? Then I saw it. The folder. The one that contained all the confidential financial documents for the firm's upcoming deal. The deal that could make or break us. It was the kind of information that, if leaked, could cost me my career, my reputation, everything I had worked so hard for. She pulled it out so easily, almost casually, like it was hers to take. I knew the stakes. I knew what she was holding in her hands. I had to act fast. My mind raced as I weighed my options. I could call her out now, but that would just make everything worse. She was too good at playing the victim, and I'd be left holding the bag. No, I needed to be smart about this. I couldn't let her know I was watching. I had to confront her at home when the time was right. But the idea of walking in and playing it cool, pretending I didn't already know what she'd done, made my skin crawl. How could I even face her knowing she had crossed a line like this? I quickly shifted the feed, checking to make sure there was no one else with her, no one else who might complicate things. She was alone, at least for now. That gave me some time, but the longer I sat there, the heavier the weight on my chest grew. The betrayal, the disbelief. This wasn't just about stealing documents anymore. It was about everything I'd always felt in the shadows of our family. Claire had always been the one to get away with things, always the one who could do no wrong. But this was different. I forced myself to focus on the next step. I'd report it, get the firm's legal team on it, and deal with whatever came after. But as I stared at Claire's face, so focused, so calm as she tucked the folder into her bag, I knew one thing for sure: this wasn't going to be easy. The tension in my chest made it hard to breathe. I was going to have to go home later, face her, confront her, play this whole thing out like it was just a misunderstanding. But I wasn't fool enough to think this would blow over. Claire was good at getting away with things. She always had been. That's how she'd gotten away with so much already. How she'd gotten away with being the star of the family. But not this time. Not with this. I closed my eyes for a moment, bracing myself for what was to come. When I saw Claire again, I'd have to act like I had no idea what she was doing. But inside, I was already plotting my next move. And I knew this wasn't the end of it. I showed up at my parents' house later that evening, doing my best to keep my face neutral. It was family dinner night, the same routine we'd followed for years. The familiar smell of my mom's cooking hit me as soon as I stepped through the door, and I tried to remind myself that this was just another night. Except it wasn't. Not anymore. Claire was already there, of course. She was always the first to arrive, always the center of attention. Her kids were running around, laughing, while her husband sat at the head of the table, looking like he had 100 other places to be. But Claire, she was chatting away, her voice light and easy, as if nothing was wrong. She saw me walk in and gave me that smile, the one that was both warm and a little too perfect, like she could do no wrong. My stomach twisted, but I smiled back, forcing the tension out of my shoulders. "Hey, sis," she said, tossing her hair over her shoulder as she gave me a hug. "How's work? You look stressed. Everything okay?" I nodded, trying to swallow the lump in my throat. "Yeah, just busy. Same old." I didn't want to talk about work, not with everything that had happened today, not with her. Instead, I focused on the familiar hum of the dinner conversation, trying to keep my mind off the images of her rifling through my safe. Claire didn't miss a beat. She continued, making small talk about her latest influencer projects, her brand new collaboration with a skincare line, and her ever-growing follower count. The kind of stuff that always made me feel like I was standing on the outside, looking in. But I kept my face calm, kept my attention fixed on the conversation, pretending that none of it bothered me. Then she casually dropped the bomb. "I've been working on something big lately," she said, her voice so smooth and effortless it made me want to cringe. "A new investment opportunity. I've got this top-tier consultant advising me on some private financial stuff. He's giving me the inside track on some really exciting things." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Private financial stuff. I tried to hide my reaction, but I could feel my heart rate spike. Was she really talking about what I thought she was talking about? Was she hinting at the deal, the one she had no business knowing anything about? I leaned forward, keeping my voice steady. "A consultant, huh? That's interesting. What kind of opportunities? Anything I might know about?" I was pushing, but I couldn't help myself. She was talking about things she shouldn't have access to. She was toying with fire, and I needed to know how much she knew. She shrugged, picking at her food, her eyes flicking toward my parents for a second. "Oh, just some private stuff. I'm really excited about it. I can't say too much, but he's been really helpful. It's kind of exclusive, but it feels like the right time. She smiled again, too casually, and I felt the tightness in my chest grow. I tried to mask my anxiety, but my mind was racing. The documents from the safe. Was this her way of telling me that she was involved in what I'd seen earlier? That she had the information in her hands? I wanted to shout, to call her out right then and there, but I couldn't. Not in front of everyone, not in front of our parents. I pushed the thought down, focusing on her words, trying to find the cracks in the story. What kind of consultant? Someone reputable, I hope. She met my gaze, her smile not faltering. "Oh, totally. He's got a reputation for being in the know. I trust him. And yeah, I'm really excited to see where this goes." I forced a tight smile, my stomach flipping. I needed more. But the more I pressed, the more I could see Claire's walls go up. I had to tread carefully. She was good at deflecting, at dancing around anything that made her uncomfortable. I'd watched her do it 1,000 times before, and I knew I couldn't back her into a corner just yet. So, I switched gears. "That's good," I said, a little too quickly. "I'm sure it'll be a great opportunity. You always know how to make the most of things." Claire's face softened, and she shrugged again, her fingers toying with her glass of wine. "Yeah, I guess I do," she said, letting the words hang in the air like she didn't have a care in the world. but something in her eyes flickered. Maybe it was guilt, maybe it was pride, but it was there, and it made my skin crawl. The whole conversation felt like a carefully constructed dance around the truth, and I was sick of it. The tension in the room thickened, and I could feel my parents shifting in their seats, sensing the uncomfortable undercurrent between us. They didn't get it. They never did. They were too wrapped up in Claire's world of sponsored posts and shiny new deals to see what was really happening. I glanced over at my dad, who was picking at his food, half listening, half trying to steer the conversation away from anything too serious. My mom was asking Claire about her kids' latest school activities, her voice light, distracted. The usual. But for me, everything had shifted. The whole night felt like a game, a dangerous one. As dinner wore on, I stayed quiet, but my mind was spinning. I couldn't confront Claire here, not in front of everyone. But when I got her alone, when I finally had her in private, I would make her admit what she'd done. I didn't know how, but I would make her confess. I wasn't letting this go. Not now. Not after everything I had seen. After dinner, when the usual small talk settled into the background, I found myself standing by the window in the living room, pretending to admire the view of the yard. But I wasn't really looking at the outside world. I was watching Claire, who was laughing with her husband on the couch, her laughter ringing out a little too brightly. I couldn't take it anymore. I moved across the room, my feet almost heavy as I approached her. My heart was beating too fast, and I tried to push the adrenaline back to stay calm. But I couldn't ignore the anger bubbling up inside me. This was it. This was the moment I had to face her. "Hey, can I talk to you for a second?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Too steady. She looked up, a flicker of something in her eyes, but it quickly passed. "Sure, what's up?" We stepped away from the others, into the hallway where the noise from the living room couldn't reach us. The tension between us was already thick, but I wasn't sure if she realized how much worse it was about to get. I crossed my arms, trying to keep my voice even, trying to act like this was just another conversation. "I know what you did, Claire." She blinked, a little too quickly. "What do you mean?" I took a breath, fighting to keep the edge from my tone. "I know you broke into my apartment today. I know you went straight for my office and accessed the safe." She froze, her face going a little pale. For a second, I thought she might actually crack, but then she recovered, her lips curling into something like disbelief. "Are you serious?" she said, laughing a little too much. "This is crazy. I didn't break into anything." "What are you talking about?" I didn't let her off the hook. "The cameras caught you, Claire. I saw the footage. You used a lockpicking set to open the safe. I saw everything." Her eyes darted around, like she was looking for an escape. Okay, she said, holding up her hands in mock surrender. I didn't think it was a big deal. I just borrowed a few things to help with that investment opportunity I was telling you about." "Borrowed." My voice cracked, and I fought back the frustration that clawed at me. "You stole confidential documents, Claire. Do you realize how serious that is? Do you have any idea what you're messing with?" Her face tightened, the smile fading for a moment, but she quickly regained her composure. "It's just a family matter, okay? I didn't mean to make it into something big. I was just trying to help with the deal. You know how important it is to me to make something of myself." "You don't get it," I said, feeling the heat rise in my chest. "This isn't just a family thing. You didn't borrow anything. You took files that could ruin my career. The deal we've been working on, the one with the top client, if those documents get out, I could lose everything, my job, my reputation, everything." She crossed her arms, defensive, her voice lowering. "You're overreacting. It's not that big of a deal. I was just looking for some guidance, you know? I thought if I had the documents, I'd be able to make the right decisions." "Guidance?" I could feel the words coming out in clipped breaths, like they were choking me. "You had no right to go through my stuff, to steal from me. You could have ruined me. And for what? So you could get ahead in some stupid investment." Her jaw set, her eyes hardening. "It's not stupid. You don't understand. I've worked my whole life to get the attention I deserve, to prove I'm more than just the pretty face everyone expects me to be. I was just trying to make something of myself too." I took a step forward, trying to keep my voice even, but my words felt like they were coming from somewhere deeper now, somewhere raw. "You think stealing from me is going to make you something. You think this is your big break. You're not just risking your future, Claire. You're dragging mine down with you." She shook her head, eyes glinting with defiance. "I didn't ask for your help, and I don't need your approval. I was just trying to make a change. And maybe, just maybe, you should stop trying to act like everything's so perfect in your little world. You don't have to control everything. My fists clenched, and I struggled to keep my voice low. This isn't about controlling things. It's about you understanding the mess you've made. This is criminal, Claire. You could face legal consequences. I can't fix this for you. Her eyes narrowed, and the smile was gone. So what? You're going to report me. You're going to turn me in. I didn't want to answer, but I couldn't lie. I have to. You've crossed a line, and I can't pretend it didn't happen. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. The air between us was thick, heavier than it had ever been. I could see the gears turning in her head, but there was nothing left for her to say. She had already made her choice. "I'll deal with it," she said, her voice flat, colder now. "But you better remember, this is just a family thing. Don't make it more than it is." I exhaled, holding her gaze, knowing full well this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The decision to report Claire felt like a weight pressing down on my chest. I sat at my desk the next morning, the phone in my hand, staring at the screen, willing myself to make the call. I'd spent the entire night tossing and turning, running through every possible outcome. But there was no way around it. Claire had crossed a line, and I couldn't let her drag me down with her. I dialed the number for the firm's security team. My hand shook as the phone rang, and I felt the nerves clawing at my stomach. But I couldn't afford to back out now. When the call connected, I took a deep breath. "I need to report a security breach," I said, my voice steady but tight. "Someone accessed my apartment without permission. They took sensitive documents from my office safe." There was a pause on the other end, and I could almost hear the person's eyebrows raise. "Can you give me more details?" I didn't hesitate. I told them everything. The break-in, the footage, the stolen documents. I described Claire's involvement, careful not to make it sound too personal, though I knew they'd catch the connection. The more I spoke, the more the reality of the situation sank in. This wasn't just a family matter anymore. This was corporate, legal, and serious. After I hung up, I felt sick to my stomach. Claire's name was now on the record, tied to the breach, and there was no undoing it. My role in the whole mess was clear. No matter how I felt about the situation, there was no turning back. It didn't take long for the firm's legal and compliance teams to take over. I started getting calls from higher-ups almost immediately. The first was from our chief legal officer, a no-nonsense woman with a voice that could cut through stone. "I understand you've had a situation involving stolen documents," she said, her voice calm but firm. "We need a full statement from you as soon as possible. This could have serious ramifications for the company, and we need to assess the damage immediately." I tried to keep my voice steady, but my throat felt tight. "Yes, I'll provide a full statement. I'll cooperate with everything." The words felt hollow, like they weren't even coming from me. The thought of Claire hearing that I'd reported her, the look in her eyes when she found out this was bigger than a family dispute, made my stomach churn. But I couldn't let that stop me. I had to think about the bigger picture. The stolen documents contained critical financial information for a high-profile client. If that deal fell through, or worse, if the documents were leaked, it could cause massive financial damage to the firm. My career could go down in flames along with it. As I started drafting my statement, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was spiraling out of control. The betrayal wasn't just about the documents anymore. It was about how Claire had always gotten away with everything, how she'd been able to charm her way through life, leaving me to pick up the pieces. This was a wake-up call, not just for me, but for our entire family. Claire didn't understand the consequences of her actions. She never had to. I thought back to the conversation at dinner, her dismissive tone, the way she'd shrugged off the seriousness of what she'd done. She didn't get it. She never did. She was acting out of entitlement, like she was above the rules, like none of this would come back to bite her. And now, because of that, everything was about to change. I could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on me. I wasn't just protecting my job. I was doing what needed to be done, no matter how much it hurt. The thought of facing Claire in court, knowing this would go public, made my hands shake. She wasn't just going to lose her freedom over this. Our family would be ripped apart. It was already starting to unravel, and I didn't know if we'd ever put the pieces back together. But there was no choice. I couldn't protect her anymore. The firm's reputation, my career, it all came before everything else. I hit send on the final version of my statement, and then I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. The firm would take it from here, the legal team would handle the fallout, But I couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest part was still ahead of me. I sat in my apartment that night, staring at the dim light from my desk lamp reflecting off the empty walls. I should have been working, but I couldn't concentrate. My mind kept circling back to the family dynamics I had spent years trying to ignore. The tension between Claire and me, the way we'd always been positioned against each other. Claire had always been the golden child, the one everyone praised for her effortless beauty, and the way she could make a living out of sharing pictures of her life. The way our parents fawned over her social media followers like they were actual accomplishments. But I never got it. I'd worked my ass off, spent years buried in spreadsheets and reports, fighting for my place in a world that didn't care about me unless I made the numbers work. And still, they couldn't see it. I could still hear my mom's voice, light and airy, telling me I needed to lighten up or have more fun like Claire. To her, my success was always just a byproduct of my job. To Claire, my hard work was invisible. My role at the firm, my drive, my ambition, none of it had ever mattered. What mattered was the fun I was apparently missing, the life I was supposedly too serious to enjoy. It wasn't like I was jealous. I never thought I was. I had my own life, my own identity. But the way our parents saw Claire and how they treated me, it hurt more than I wanted to admit. The moment I'd walk in the door, they'd turn their attention to her latest post or her latest collaboration with some brand, her life always being just more somehow. It was like they could never quite understand why I couldn't just be happy with my quiet victories. I couldn't help but think back to all those years when Claire would be applauded for the smallest things. "Oh, Claire, you look so pretty today." "Claire, that brand partnership is amazing." And there I was, buried in financial projections, always the one trying to prove I was worth something in a way that wasn't glamorous. But I didn't get the applause, the likes, the attention. I just got, "That's nice, sweetie. Good job," when I finally achieved something that mattered. The cold truth hit me as I sat there in the silence. This wasn't just about the theft. This was about everything that had been building for years. The quiet resentment I'd kept buried, the way I had always felt like the second choice, the one who was always overlooked. I wasn't even sure when it started, but I had learned to keep my feelings to myself. I'd spent my entire life trying to stay invisible, just blending into the background while Claire soaked up all the spotlight. But now I had to be the one to step forward. I had to be the one to clean up this mess. I knew Claire never understood the stakes of what she'd done. She never had to. But I also knew that in the eyes of my parents, there was still a chance for her to get away with it. The phone call with my mom the next morning only confirmed that. "Are you sure you have to do this?" Her voice crackled through the receiver, a mix of concern and disbelief. "I mean, couldn't you fix this without it going public? Without ruining Claire's life?" I swallowed the lump in my throat, trying to keep my voice from breaking. "I don't know how to fix it, Mom. I didn't do this. She's the one who made the choice. I'm just dealing with the consequences." "But she's your sister," she pleaded, like that somehow made everything better. "Can't you just talk to her? Help her. She didn't mean to hurt anyone." I could feel the weight of her words pushing down on me. She was right in the sense that Claire had never meant for any of this to happen. But it didn't change the fact that she had crossed a line. She had taken something that wasn't hers and used it for her own gain. And that was something I couldn't ignore, no matter how much I loved her. "Mom, you don't understand," I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "It's not just about Claire anymore. It's about what's right. What she did could ruin everything for me and for the firm. You don't get it. You've never understood the pressure I'm under, the kind of responsibility I have to take on every single day. You and Dad always thought Claire's success was enough for the family, but I've been carrying this weight, this real weight, for years, and now it's all crashing down." There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and I could almost picture her sitting there, chewing on her words, trying to understand what I was saying. Finally, she spoke, her voice softer this time. "I didn't mean to make you feel like that. I just don't want this to destroy you both." I closed my eyes, leaning back in my chair. I don't either, but I can't fix this for her. I can't fix what she's done. I've already lost too much. The conversation ended shortly after that, with my mom promising to think about it, but not really understanding what I was facing. I knew that. She never truly saw what I had built, what it took for me to get here, because it wasn't shiny and easy to post about on Instagram. As I hung up, I realized something. This wasn't just about Claire stealing documents. This wasn't just about the firm or the fallout from a financial leak. This was about years of being overlooked, undervalued, and ignored by my own family. And now, Claire was going to face the consequences, and it was my responsibility to make sure she did. But no matter how much I tried to prepare myself, I couldn't escape the feeling that reporting her, and the fallout that was sure to come, would change everything between us, and maybe even between me and my parents too. This wasn't just a breach of trust, it was the breaking point of everything we had pretended was fine for years. The case went public 2 weeks later. I remember the exact moment I saw the headline on my phone: Sister of prominent financial analyst charged with theft of confidential documents. My stomach dropped into my shoes, and I stared at the words, the weight of them like a punch I wasn't prepared for. The whole world knew now. My world. The thing I had been dreading, the exposure, had come, and there was no going back. Claire's lawyer came out swinging, of course. He made sure to paint her as a well-meaning, misunderstood woman who never meant to hurt anyone. He claimed she had no malicious intent, that she had simply borrowed the documents in an attempt to help with her investment ventures. I could barely hold back the bile rising in my throat as I listened to his words being parroted across the news. I knew the truth, and it was a long way from what he was saying. But what could I do? The evidence was overwhelming. The footage didn't lie. I'd watched it more times than I cared to admit, seeing Claire pick the lock on my safe, her movements so casual, like it was just another day in her life. The emails she'd sent from my apartment, the financial records she'd accessed, they painted a clear picture of what she had done. There was no way to deny it, no way for her to wiggle out of it. And yet there she was, playing the victim, trying to make herself out to be just another pawn in a bigger game. I was asked to testify at the trial. At first, I didn't even know if I could go through with it. My stomach turned at the thought of standing there, in front of the court, talking about my sister like she wasn't the person I had spent my whole life with. But I knew I had to. There was no way out. This wasn't just a family problem anymore. It was a legal one, and I had a duty to tell the truth. In the days leading up to the trial, I tried to prepare myself. I studied the case, went over the footage again, and made sure I was ready for anything. But every time I thought I had it together, I would catch myself thinking about Claire, her face when she realized what this was really about, her anger, her hurt. She didn't get it. She still didn't. I could hear her voice in my head, the way she'd said, "It's not a big deal," when I confronted her. But it was a big deal. This wasn't some harmless family squabble over a petty fight. She had crossed a line, and now she was going to face the consequences. The day of the trial came, and I felt like I was walking into a war zone. When I entered the courthouse, the weight of all the eyes on me hit me like a wave. My parents were there, sitting quietly in the back of the room, their faces drawn and tense. They were trying to stay neutral, trying to support both of us without taking sides. But I could see the disappointment in their eyes. My mom's gaze kept flicking between Claire and me, her lips tight, like she didn't know which of us to root for. My dad sat with his arms crossed, his jaw set, his expression unreadable. They were both upset, but I knew, deep down, that they were more upset with me for pressing charges than they were with Claire for stealing from me. They didn't get it either. How could they? The prosecution laid out the case against Claire piece by piece, and my heart sank lower with each passing moment. The footage, the emails, the records, there was no doubt about what she had done. But Claire's defense was pushing hard on the idea that she hadn't understood the full weight of her actions, that she had no idea the documents were so critical, that she never intended to cause harm. I wanted to scream. How could she not know? She was a smart woman. She knew what she was doing. But it wasn't enough to say it. It had to be proven. It had to be real. And the truth was, Claire was still playing the game. She still thought she could talk her way out of it. She still thought this was something we could just smooth over, like the hundreds of other things we'd swept under the rug in the past. I sat on the witness stand, the sweat beading on my forehead, my hands gripping the edge of the chair. It felt like I was standing in a dream, like this wasn't real, like I could just wake up and find everything back to normal. But it wasn't a dream, and this wasn't going to go away. I spoke slowly, my voice steady as I outlined the evidence. I told them everything: how Claire had accessed my apartment, how she had taken the documents, how she had betrayed not just me, but the entire firm. I didn't look at her while I spoke. I couldn't. If I did, I might break. But I felt her eyes on me the entire time, burning into my back, making me question if I was doing the right thing. When it was over, I walked back to my seat, feeling the weight of everyone's eyes on me. My parents were already on their feet, huddled together in the corner. They didn't say anything, but I could feel the tension between us. a kind of invisible wall that I knew would never come down. Claire's lawyer had one last attempt, trying to paint me as a cold, calculating person who was doing this just to win. But I wasn't doing it for me. I was doing it because it was the only thing I could do. And deep down, I knew it was the right thing, even if it felt like the hardest thing I'd ever had to do. Because as much as I hated to admit it, Claire's actions weren't just a betrayal, they were the final chapter in a story that had been building for years. One where I was always the shadow, always the one who had to pick up the pieces. The trial wasn't over, but already I could see it clearly. There was no going back. Everything we had as a family was hanging by a thread. The day of Claire's sentencing was a cold, gray morning. The courtroom felt smaller than I remembered, suffocating under the weight of what was about to happen. I sat in the hard, wooden chair, my palms slick with sweat, trying to steady my nerves. The air was thick with tension. Every movement, every murmur from the crowd amplified in the silence that stretched between us. I was going to testify again today. One last time. The final word on what had already been decided. But there was a pit in my stomach, a knot that wouldn't loosen no matter how hard I tried to breathe through it. Claire's future was hanging by a thread, and I knew I was the one who had pulled it. I looked over at her, sitting beside her lawyer, her hands trembling in her lap. Her makeup was flawless, but her face was pale, drawn. I could see the way she kept glancing at me, but I didn't look back. I couldn't. I had done what I had to do, and I couldn't let the ache of family loyalty cloud that now. Not when everything was so close to being decided. When it was her turn to speak, Claire stood up slowly, her shoulders slumped. She took a deep breath before turning toward the judge, her eyes shining with unshed tears. She spoke, her voice breaking as she apologized. I never meant to hurt anyone. I didn't understand how serious my actions were. I was just trying to, make something of myself. I didn't think it would end up like this. Her words were choked, and she began to sob quietly, her face crumpling as she begged the court for leniency. She looked so small, so fragile, like the weight of the consequences had finally hit her. It was a raw, gut-wrenching moment, but there was a part of me that stayed hard, that stayed unmoved. I had seen what she was capable of, and I knew what she had taken from me, what she had stolen from everyone who had trusted her. I thought of everything, the stolen documents, the lies, the way she tried to play it off like it wasn't that big of a deal. How many times had she done that in our lives, sweeping things under the rug, thinking she could charm her way out of anything? And now, here she was, broken, sorry, begging for forgiveness. But I couldn't forgive her. Not yet. When it was my turn to speak, my heart hammered in my chest, but my voice was steady, even though I felt everything inside me pull tight. I stood up, the floor beneath my feet suddenly feeling too solid, too unyielding. "Your Honor," I began, keeping my gaze on the judge, but knowing Claire was there, in my peripheral vision. What my sister did was not just a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. She knew exactly what she was doing when she broke into my apartment, when she stole those documents. I paused, steadying myself. Those documents were critical. They could have destroyed everything I've worked for, everything the firm has worked for. And they were taken, stolen, for personal gain. I could feel the weight of every word as it left my mouth, as if I was putting a pin through my own heart every time I spoke the truth. But I couldn't lie, not anymore. The impact of her actions goes beyond just the legal consequences. This has fractured our family, and I'm sorry, but I can't look past that. I looked down for a moment, the words threatening to choke me, but I swallowed hard and forced myself to finish. I'm here because I have no choice, because I have to protect what's mine, and I have to live with the consequences of what she did. But I don't want her to think this was just about me. This is about everything we've lost: trust, integrity, respect, and that can't be replaced. I took a deep breath and sat down, not daring to look at Claire. I could hear her muffled sobs from the other side of the room, but it didn't reach me. The finality of it all hung in the air like a death sentence. The family I had tried to hold together, the sister I had always tried to protect, everything was unraveling right in front of me. The judge didn't speak immediately, and the room was silent except for the sound of Claire's crying. I couldn't shake the feeling that we had both crossed some invisible line that couldn't be erased. Finally, the judge spoke, his voice stern. "The defendant, Claire Michaels, is hereby sentenced to 6 months in federal custody and will be required to pay restitution to the company for the stolen documents and associated damages." The words hit like a physical blow. 6 months. I had known it was coming, but hearing it out loud made it real. Claire would serve time, her once perfect life, her social media, her brand, everything she'd built on the foundation of charm and ease was now shattered, and no amount of apology could fix that. She gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, as if the sentence had knocked the breath out of her. She turned toward her lawyer, who was whispering quickly to her, but she was already crumpling, sinking into the chair beside him, her sobs shaking her entire body. I wanted to feel relief. I wanted to feel something other than this hollow ache. But as I sat there, looking at the pieces of her life falling apart, I couldn't escape the feeling that this wasn't justice. It was just the price of doing what was right. I had done the right thing. I had reported her. I had stood my ground in court. But the cost of that was too high. I left the courtroom with the weight of everything on my shoulders. Claire's life was ruined, my family was fractured, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was no going back. But I also knew one thing for sure. There was no more pretending. The truth had come out, and it had taken everything with it. And I couldn't fix it. It's been a few years now, and if I'm being honest, I don't think about Claire as much anymore. She's out trying to rebuild her life, starting over from scratch. She's quieter now, less of the bubbly influencer she once was. I hear about her sometimes through mutual friends. She's working with a smaller brand, doing her best to reestablish her image. But the truth is, her life will never be the same. Neither will mine. My parents. They still won't talk about it. It's like that part of our family history has been erased, buried under the weight of everything that happened. Whenever I see them, it's like there's a wall between us, one that I can't get past no matter how hard I try. We don't talk about the trial or Claire or what it cost us. And maybe that's for the best. They're still processing the loss in their own way, but I've stopped needing them to fix it. I've stopped waiting for them to validate me, to acknowledge what I went through. My career, on the other hand, has taken off. I'm in a higher position now, managing accounts, running projects, getting the recognition I've worked for years to earn. I've made a name for myself at the firm. People respect me now. I'm not just the quiet analyst anymore, the one who was always in the background. I've carved out my own space, and I'm proud of that. I don't feel the need to explain myself to anyone anymore. I used to spend so much time justifying my choices to my family, explaining why I had to do things a certain way, why I couldn't just play along with their version of reality. But now, my work speaks for itself. I don't need their approval. I don't need Claire's approval. There are days when I catch myself wondering what would have happened if things had gone differently, if I had ignored the theft, if I'd stayed silent and let it go. Maybe things would have been easier. Maybe Claire and I could have patched things up, found a way to move on. But then I remember the weight of the decision I made, the right decision, and I don't regret it. I can't. Looking back, I realized that reporting Claire wasn't just about protecting my career or the firm. It was about protecting myself, my peace of mind. It was about taking control of my life in a way I never had before. For so long, I was defined by my relationship with my family, with Claire. I was always the one who had to hold everything together, to keep the peace. But after the trial, after everything that happened, I finally understood that I didn't need to carry that weight anymore. The truth is, I've learned how to let go. I've learned how to trust myself, how to prioritize my own success without feeling guilty about it. I've learned that sometimes you have to make the hardest decisions, the ones that feel impossible, in order to grow. And I'm growing every day.